Hello everyone, welcome to the Cinema Analysis channel. I am Juzo. This channel will explore the hidden truths of films that are not usually revealed. Today I'd like to talk about Rear Window. I want to discuss why this film is considered a masterpiece. If you haven't seen the film yet, I suggest you watch it first. So let's get started. So did you see the film? The short story It Had to Be Murder was published in 1942. Its author, Cornell Woolrich, also wrote under the pseudonyms William Irish and George Hopley. Rear Window is a film adaptation of the story. Many viewers are completely drawn into the world of this film. It's rare for a movie to make the audience feel as if they've become the protagonist, but this one does. Why is that? I would like to explore the reasons from two perspectives. One is the film setting and the story structure. The other is its cinematographic techniques. One reason the audience closely identifies with the protagonist is that he is physically immobile. Jeff, played by James Stewart, is a photographer who was injured in a car race accident. With his leg in a cast, he is confined to a wheelchair and unable to leave his apartment. From the beginning to the end of the film, the cast remains on his leg. The audience is in a similar position. They are seated, unable to move, and can only watch what unfolds on the screen. This mirrors Jeff's experience, which deepens our identification with him. One of the film's brilliant choices is to begin when Jeff is frustrated by his immobility. There's a shot of a helicopter hovering in the sky. This is likely a deliberate inclusion, symbolizing freedom and contrast. The helicopter can fly anywhere while Jeff is trapped indoors. It also represents an observer watching others from above, just like Jeff peeking into his neighbors' lives. Because the leg in plaster itches, the protagonist can't do without his back scratcher. Although comical, it becomes a way of expressing the protagonist's helplessness. Stella, the nurse, scolds him for his peeping and urges him to marry his girlfriend. But Jeff is hesitant. Lisa, played by Grace Kelly, is a glamorous model and socialite. Jeff doesn't believe he's a good match for her. Everyone in the world lives with some sense of limitation. The question it poses is, what can you do in such a difficult situation? This theme resonates throughout the story. The era in which Rear Window was made is also meaningful. The film was released in 1954, a time when the concept of personal privacy was not matured yet. In Back to the Future, the protagonist time travels to 1955. In one scene, a television is delivered to his mother's home, a rarity at the time. Similarly, Jeff's apartment has no television. According to the original story, the protagonist isn't in the habit of reading books either. So what can he do? Nothing but look out the window. And as human nature goes, people are naturally curious about others' lives. Because Jeff is a photographer, he has a telephoto lens, a key prop in enabling him and us to observe the world outside. And air conditioning was not widespread. In the summer, you can't help but open the windows. The picture at the beginning shows a temperature of 94 degrees Fahrenheit or 34.4 degrees Celsius. A hot summer without air conditioning. This factor establishes the story. Another aspect of the illusion that makes the audience feel like the protagonist is the film's video technique. One key difference between novels and films lies in the point of view. Novels often tell stories from a character's perspective. Sometimes an omniscient narrator is used, but this can reduce immersion. In contrast, films are usually shot from the point of view of the camera, a neutral observer. This third-person point of view usually does not match the point of view of the characters. Because the audience wants to see the world and the characters within it, the story is not usually presented from a character's own visual perspective. As a result, viewers don't normally see exactly what the protagonist sees, which can limit emotional connection. But Rear Window challenges this norm. Many people point out that the camera almost never leaves Jeff's apartment in Rear Window. There are a few exceptions, which are discussed later. In the book Hitchcock Truffaut remarks that the entire film is shot from the perspective of a single character, Jeff. Hitchcock agrees but adds a crucial explanation. Although the camera rarely leaves Jeff's room, and the scenes appear to be shown from his point of view, this is a deliberate illusion created by Hitchcock. The first shot of the film frames the window itself. The camera then cuts to a cat walking along the edge of the courtyard, pans upward and moves to the left. It passes over the walls and windows of the surrounding buildings before finally revealing the protagonist, Jeff, sleeping and sweating. Because Jeff is part of the shot, this cannot be his own point of view. Instead, it reflects what the audience sneaking into his room would want to see. This type of camera movement appears several more times throughout the film. From Jeff's window, we see the courtyard and the rooms across the way. There, the daily lives and the relationships of many different people are visible. Miss Lonely Heart, who lives a solitary life, a middle-aged couple raising a small dog, a beautiful dancer, a songwriter, a newlywed couple, and Lars Thorwald, a salesman whose wife is bedridden. Jeff observes them all day long. This film is also an ensemble drama centered around the residents living in the apartment building opposite Jeff's. The first 30 minutes portray the ordinary lives of these people alongside Jeff's growing frustration. Then, after the first quarter of the film, an incident occurs that marks the transition into the second act. At midnight, Jeff hears a woman scream and the sound of something breaking. It could have been a simple marital quarrel, but then, during a rain, Thorwald leaves his apartment with a suitcase at 1:55 a.m., returns at 2:35, and immediately goes out again before coming back. Going in and out repeatedly in the middle of the night in the rain is clearly abnormal. Later, while Jeff is sleeping, Thorwald leaves the apartment again, this time accompanied by a woman in a hat. This moment creates suspense. The question isn't simply whether Thorwald killed his wife. A woman left with him, and she might be his wife. Suspicious viewers may think this is a trick, but they are also worried that Jeff, who didn't see the woman in the hat, might falsely accuse Thorwald. The shot that captures the woman leaving is identical in movement to the opening shot. We should remember that it is not the point of view of Jeff, but the one of the audiences that sneaked into the room. Jeff shares his suspicion with Stella, the nurse. The blinds in Thorwald's apartment remain closed. Jeff sees Thorwald wrapping knives and saws in paper. tools that might have been used to dismember a body. He tells Lisa, but she doesn't believe him. This setup shares elements with The Lady Vanished, where the protagonist suspects something terrible has happened, but no one believes her. In the film, the protagonist begins to question her own perception after hitting her head. Jeff's weakness in Rear Window is his peeping. Lisa believes he is becoming delusional from boredom and confinement. Both films explore the torment of being dismissed when trying to expose a potential crime. Jeff remains convinced that a murder has occurred, but the audience has doubts, because Jeff hasn't seen the woman who went out of the room. If that woman were someone's wife, then no crime occurred, and Jeff's theory is just a fantasy. Despite her initial doubts, Lisa begins to change her mind when she notices that the wife's room is now empty. Jeff reports his suspicions to his friend Doyle, a detective. This happens around the halfway point of the film, but Doyle dismisses Jeff's theory as mere imagination, especially after eyewitnesses claim to have seen the wife. At this moment, Jeff is shown holding his back scratcher, symbolizing his helplessness. Jeff didn't witness the murder, only a series of suspicious events. Still, he believes strongly that a crime was committed, and eventually the audience begins to believe it too. They even start to hope a murder occurred. Proving the murder becomes the protagonist's goal. Then a woman's scream rings out. The puppy in the courtyard has been killed, its neck broken. Thorwald had buried something in the flower bed, and the puppy had been trying to dig it up. At this moment of commotion, the camera leaves Jeff's apartment for the very first time, and it captures the people who appear. The screaming woman, the puppy's owner, Miss Lonely Heart, who put the puppy's body in the basket. The people gathered for the party in the songwriter's room, the young couple. They are the people witnessing the commotion. Until this point, every shot has shown views that someone in Jeff's room could see by leaning out the window. These were shots meant to replicate what the audience might see if they were physically in Jeff's room. But in this scene, the camera moves beyond those spatial limitations. This is clear from the angles used to capture the people seen from the courtyard. Yet the audience feel as though they are still seeing through Jeff's eyes. The tension of the scene makes viewers forget the rules established earlier. Here, Hitchcock gives the audience exactly what they want to see: people's reactions, expressions, and movements. Even if it means breaking the visual rule, it feels natural. One of the reasons Rear Window is considered a masterpiece is that it draws the viewer's awareness to the camera's point of view. Hitchcock masterfully uses the structure of human memory to achieve this. When people recall memories, they sometimes imagine scenes from angles they never actually saw. Sometimes their own figure even appears in the memory. Why does someone include their own image in a memory they personally experienced? It's likely because humans understand that what they see from their own perspective is not the whole picture. There are always other perspectives, other people who perceive us differently. To recreate a memory faithfully, even imagined external viewpoints are necessary. Our sense of reality functions this way. That's why we sometimes believe in views we never actually saw. We accept them as true. To us, truth is always what we believe to be true. So when the camera leaves Jeff's apartment in the scene where the dead puppy is discovered, the audience doesn't feel disoriented. This is because human perception of reality accepts reconstructions, internalized and believed images as real. Although the camera now has freedom to explore the courtyard, there is one thing it never shows: the fourth wall. Film scholar Michel Sian refers to this as the fourth side. This is the wall of Jeff's own apartment. We can see the walls of the three other apartment buildings, but never the one Jeff is in. Sian suggests the true reason the camera steps outside Jeff's room is to make the audience forget about the fourth wall. Why should they forget it? Sian proposes. Probably it is to magically and mysteriously merge the room in the theater with the courtyard in the film. In other words, the fourth wall disappears so the audience feels they are experiencing the events alongside Jeff. Let's consider one assumption. What if the fourth side were shown to the audience? Jeff's apartment likely has many other rooms and residents. Those other people may have seen what happened in Thorwald's apartment across the courtyard. But when people witness trouble or a crime in the presence of others, they often do nothing, assuming someone else will act. This is known as the bystander effect. If the fourth side was shown, the idea that someone else might take action would emerge in the audience's mind. That would weaken the protagonist's motivation to act. If either the protagonist or the audience expects others to intervene, the suspense of the story would be significantly diminished. To prevent this, Hitchcock carefully ensured that the audience never notices the fourth side. With no concrete evidence, Jeff and Lisa almost gave up trying to prove the crime, but they became convinced again of Thorwald's guilt, because he was the only person who didn't lean forward to witness the commotion. At the moment, Lisa guessed the motive for killing the puppy because it knew too much. This is likely humor from screenwriter Michael Hayes. It references Hitchcock's earlier film, The Man Who Knew Too Much, which he remade 2 years later. After the scene, the camera once again begins filming only from Jeff's apartment. There's no choice but to find proof while Thorwald is away. Stella, the nurse, and Lisa, Jeff's girlfriend, go out to investigate. Because Jeff is immobilized, all he can do is observe from his window. At this point, the camera's perspective is fully aligned with Jeff's. When Lisa delivers the threatening letter, both Jeff and the audience are nervous that Thorwald will discover her. Thorwald reads the letter. After that, Jeff made a phone call to lure him out. Thorwald follows his instructions and leaves for the meeting point. While he is gone, Stella and Lisa dig in the flower bed but find nothing. Then Lisa takes a reckless step. She sneaks into Thorwald's apartment through the window. Thorwald returns, and a confrontation ensues. The audience cannot hear what is said, but Lisa's gestures suggest she was saying that she wanted to enter the room on the upper floor, but mistook to enter the room. The police arrive. Lisa discreetly shows Jeff that she has stolen Thorwald's wife's ring by slipping it on her finger. But Thorwald sees it and realizes that Jeff, the man across the courtyard, is behind everything. The audience watches this suspenseful scene entirely from Jeff's perspective. Here, the challenge to match the point of view of the protagonist and that of the camera, also of the audience, is accomplished. The audience experiences the world of the story through the eyes of the protagonist, whom they empathize with most. Typically, audiences observe film narratives from a third-person perspective. But Hitchcock masterfully brings the third-person perspective closer and closer to that of the protagonist, until the audience sees the climactic horror through his eyes. This may be considered one of the film's greatest achievements. After Lisa is arrested, Jeff wants to bail her out. He gives money to Stella and sends her away. Jeff is now alone in his apartment. Then Thorwald arrives. His sinister presence enters from the front, captured directly by the camera. Thorwald approaches Jeff. Jeff buys time by blinding him with camera flashes, but Thorwald eventually grabs him. This sequence is shot from Jeff's point of view, and the audience shares his fear directly. One weakness in the climax, however, is that Jeff never locked his door. Throughout the film, Jeff's apartment door remains unlocked. Stella, Lisa, and Doyle all enter freely. This may have been common in the United States at the time the film was made. In rich and safe countries, the house is often unlocked. There are countries that at least experienced such an era. However, someone who has just accused a murderer should have been more cautious. Jeff hears Thorwald's approaching footsteps and tries to make a phone call but gives up, likely thinking there's not enough time. There's a shot where Jeff wheels himself towards the door, tries to stand, and then gives up. It's not explicitly clear what he was attempting to do. He was probably trying to lock the door but couldn't reach it. If that was Hitchcock's intention, he should have made it more evident that Jeff was attempting to lock the door but failed. Instead, Jeff appears confused, unsure of what to do. Given the circumstances, it would have made sense, even while crawling, to move towards the door and lock it. But because the door remains unlocked, Thorwald can enter and throw Jeff out of the window, making the climax possible. It's possible that the murderer could break the lock and invade the room, even if the protagonist had locked the door. However, if the filmmaker wanted to portray such a scene, the setting would need to be a secluded rural area. That's why horror films are often set in isolated cabins in the mountains. But because Rear Window takes place in a densely populated urban area, that scenario wouldn't be believable. Why don't the neighbors react to the loud noise of a door being broken down? If they did, the careful effort to conceal the fourth side would lose its meaning. When Jeff is pushed out of the window, the fourth side is revealed for the first time. Michelle Sian also notes that all the other rooms in Jeff's building are dark. This is meant to create the impression that no one else lives there. The technique of portraying the story from a character's subjective visual perspective has been attempted in other films as well. In horror films, the audience sometimes sees through the eyes of the killer or monster. A crying victim seen from the monster's perspective becomes an especially terrifying image. Consider the film Strange Days. In this story, an illegal device called Squid allows people to experience the five senses of another person. The film uses a first-person perspective to portray this. The device is used for criminal purposes, and the audience is shown crimes from the perpetrator's point of view. But viewers are often uncomfortable with first-person perspective in films. They usually prefer to see the characters themselves, rather than see what the characters see. Strange Days uses this discomfort intentionally to evoke unease about criminal acts. However, the film was a commercial failure. This was probably because the audience's discomfort with the first-person footage outweighed their enjoyment of the story. For humans, reality is not objective truth. It's the reconstructed information processed by the brain from the five senses. We don't perceive reality directly. So what kind of visual storytelling feels real? From what point of view should the world be shown? What should be shown? These are the questions a filmmaker must consider. Rear Window was created by carefully thinking through these very questions. Thank you for watching this video. If you like this video, please subscribe and give me thumbs up.